What's up, everyone? This is Ed from This Day in Metal, and today I'm very excited to be speaking with Dan Briggs, bassist and keyboardist from Grammy-nominated progressive metal legends Between the Buried and Me. The group's 11th studio album, The Blue Nowhere, is set to be released on September 12th through Inside Out Music. What's up, Dan? Thank you for joining me today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I see your setup, and is that kind of like your home studio?
This is the office. Yeah, yeah. Studio zone, basically on the wall that you can't see are basses and electric guitars to the right, and acoustic 12 string, 6 string, and banjo over here, and a wall of CDs and amps, and yeah.
So this
So it
is
all
where a lot
happens
of the
right here.
material that we've heard has started. It's been born in this room, I'm assuming.
And some of it recorded here.
Really?
There was there's some acoustic instrument stuff I recorded here, and then also the woodwinds that are on the album. I tracked in here, kind of as a matter of I wanted to. I was piecing together all the orchestral woodwinds, horn players, and
Hmm.
I wanted to have them. I didn't want to be chasing people down while we were in the studio. So I was like, if I can get that all out of the way ahead of time, that's
Hmm.
great. That's awesome. So all that was done actually probably in like January of this year. We went into the studio in February.
Okay. Very cool. It's very efficient sounding to me. That way, once you get into the studio, you hit the ground running with everything.
It's and when we're in the studio, it's 6 days a week, and we were there for a solid month, and we use every bit of it. And this time around, Blake even tracked his drums at his home studio. So that was a whole month of just, me, Tommy, and Paul shedding through stuff. Me and Paul really trading off, working one song at a time.
Hmm.
Some of the songs that were a little bit more involved, like Absent Thereafter, or Psychomantium,
Hmm.
we might have spent a whole day on just one of those tunes, just trading off back and forth to give each other a break.
Yeah.
Um, but then just chipping away, and then Blake kind of coming in and doing percussion and little extra bits at the very end. But yeah, it could, we still use every bit of time that we're allotted.
Well, I'm sure, and we're going to get into the album, and there's always, it seems, with your music, there's always a lot going on. It's very dense at times, where there's a lot of layers to it. I wanted to ask before you actually went into the studio. I know when you guys did Colors 2, which was your last album, there was a sense of wanting to prove yourselves again, just like the original Colors record in 2007. What was your mindset going in for the Blue Nowhere?
Uh, I mean, total freedom, total blank page mode. We kind of lived under the guise of Colors for, really from like 2020 until April of last year when we wrapped doing a tour of Colors and Colors 2 together.
Hmm.
And it was so nice to finally be out of the umbrella of it, writing Colors 2, even though there were lots of new elements and new, trying to approach the general idea of what Colors was as far as like splitting your head open,
Hmm.
creatively, but was always still under the guise of a record that was before, something that you were checking back in with, which was like a fun project. But it was just so nice to just be like, there's no script, there's nothing. And um and that was pretty evident by like the first tunes that people were starting to share with each other. Was like, great, we're somewhere completely different.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of which, the first single, which was Things We Tell Ourselves in the Dark, was born out of a riff that you wrote, right? And that was kind of, and I saw that you wrote, you compared it to as if like Prince's band was playing within it, right? But then you've got these, the different styles you guys are known for. There's clean vocals, there's harsh vocals, heavier and softer parts. Like, how do
Yeah.
you take an idea like that and take it in so many different directions?
Well, the bulk of that was like that was the tune that I kind of shared first to be like, here's where I'm at. So
Mhm.
that's a great example of like, great, we're just like somewhere new or whatever. I think what's fun is of course everyone's gonna latch on to a different bit of the sound or a different bit of what the tune's doing. Um, for me, I wanted to almost kind of have like like the dense nature of some of our tunes, uh, but like spliced throughout, all the instruments. So it's like you've got this density while it's under the guise, like of just this like, melodic world. That's like slowly building in dynamic. We've done the thing sometimes where like we've got a tune that's in one vibe and then there's like almost like a page turn,
Mhm.
just turns into something completely different, and I love that too. But I had the idea as the way it's laid out it was almost kind of just written exactly like that. Once start things start getting big, that's where there was like a lot of ideas and a lot of like, which direction can this go, what's going to be like, what are we building to before it comes back around. And that's like, that's where I end up, deleting a bunch of stuff and having stuff to the side and having revisions and stuff. But that's so nice because that time is so awesome and so crucial for just like it's almost like stream of conscious, like taking it all in while you're just right in that vibe. Um, and then just really seeing what from that is complementing the tune that's already established and what makes the most sense. And yeah, so it's kind of like, to me, when I look at a song like that, I'm like, that's a fun time, like, different kind of spastic between the Buried in Me song, while also kind of having this like, you can kind of like, I think, jump to any point in the song and you're like, oh yeah, this is still
Mhm.
things we tell ourselves in the dark, which doesn't always happen, and that's also part of the journey. But it was kind of like an experiment. Like, yeah, if you're starting off with something that's pretty funky, how can you keep that going as the dynamic has totally shifted? Um, and so that was kind of an idea that was in my head. Yeah, it was kind of
It
like,
it completely works
what if
too.
Prince's band was still playing now?
Yeah, it completely works too, because in the beginning you're bobbing your head to it, and then you get to the more death metal parts of it, and you're like, oh wait, this is the same song, and then it comes back a little bit. It's beautiful the way that you guys do that, and you've been doing it for so long, I feel like. Um, Now the record itself, it's not a concept record in the traditional sense that it's tied to a storyline, which is something that you guys have done before. But as I listen to it, I noticed there's lyrical themes that weave throughout. Some are present in early tracks and they reprise at the end of the album. There's also a hotel involved, I believe. Is this a
Yeah.
loose concept record? Can you explain it a little bit to me?
The concept, it is. I mean, I was under the impression it was a concept
Okay.
record. I think I mean, it's not like
It's not
it's
a
not,
storyline.
yeah, I think it's less. It's a little bit more, ethereal in nature, or in the nature of the movement of the story. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Um, but yeah, I think the hotel is this setting for all these interpretations and like different kind of. It's like something that's constantly kind of morphing
Hmm.
throughout the record. Kind of like presenting different things as they need to hit. Um, at that place of the record. I remember when Tommy was telling us about the idea for it, which was like, we got together like last August after having like a real good chunk and kind of starting to, move stuff around. And there's like, if you've heard the record, there's a big middle chunk of the record that was all, we had that all in place.
Hmm.
We're like, this is going to be here. So now let's work out, how we're getting in and out. But Tommy had said that he wanted to do a story about a hotel that had no characters. and Paul and I were like, incredible, like also, good luck. Like have
Yeah.
fun with that. And yeah, it turned out so cool. And it's I think that there is just naturally the way Tommy writes, I feel like there's a real dreamy and stream of conscious way of things coming in and getting on the page.
Yeah,
And then
I do feel like there's a bit of a theme and there's almost resolution at the end of it. I don't want to, I don't want to give away too much, but I feel like there's like a flow of the way the lyrics are going, and then at the end it's very, the last two tracks I have to say are gorgeous tracks. That kind of are more straightforward, I'll say, than the rest of the record. I wanted to ask about those two because one's the title track, The Blue Nowhere, and then Beautifully Human, and they almost feel like a sort of resolution of everything that's gone on
yeah.
before. And then you kind of have the themes from the first song like repeating at the end of the album. It's extremely well done. Am I on the right track here, or am I just?
Yeah, no, totally, totally. It's yeah, and that was something where so we have the big chunk in the middle. It's kind of like door number three into like psychomancy,
Psychomantium, Slow
slow
Paranoia, yeah.
paranoia, which is just like it's so like psychotic, it's so
Hmm.
like circusy, and there's dynamics in them, but it's a really dense, it's the densest chunk of the album.
Yeah.
And when we knew that was all pieced together, we were like, well, this there has to be a breath. So here's where we'll put at the time we were calling it the yacht rock song, which is Blue Nowhere. And then it was really interesting realizing that like the way that tune ended, with this, it ends with kind of like a morose little refrain.
Hmm.
um to me it feels very like Genesis-y. um
Yes. Yes.
um Steve Hackett was definitely mine, and when it ends, we knew like, oh, well, this sounds like it wants to resolve into E, or however we tune in C sharp. But then that led us to working out the intro. Paul had kind of written the intro, Beautifully Human, into the rest of this tune, and then was able to work that if we were like, okay, well, this is the end. And I think when we heard that theme, Tommy had written that main theme in the tune, that we were like, this is so powerful. This has to be the end. And I was really as you're talking about structures and stuff, it's so funny that um, when we're generally talking about process, and it can be with other musicians when we've done like masterclass kind of things and people are asking us about composition and stuff, our natural inclination is always to go bigger because we get so excited, and we've got four people in the group who all write and arrange music. So there's just a surplus of, you know, if someone comes in with a couple minutes of music and it passes to one person, well, they could have ideas that grow it before it even gets to the other two people. And that's how we end up with 13, 14-minute long songs. So
Hmm.
it becomes an experiment in almost, I mean, my personal journey has always over the years been trying to learn how to do more with less. You know, when I listen to a song like I Want to Hold Your Hand, and it's like a minute into the song, and I'm like, they're already on the second, they're like the bridge already. How are they doing this? It's like it's amazing to me. So I feel like when we can get across the idea of what Between the Buried Me is in that chunk of time, and in that I think that we're getting so much better, and constantly like evolving, but this idea of like finding the core of the song and being like, let's just hang out in here.
Hmm.
And those two songs I think are great examples.
I would say so for sure. Those are, I mean, I like the whole album. From I've been listening. Like I said, I've been trying to digest it. It's very, it's a lot to take in on one listen.
Yeah,
But those two stuck out to me. I'm like, these are gorgeous tracks that you guys put together to end this album. That seems to be, you know, like about introspection. There's a lot of psychology going on. There's a lot of,
oh yeah,
introspective thoughts. And to end with those two is kind of as a climax was beautiful. A beautiful way to end the album.
well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And and it's funny because there is still musically, that that the song of beautifully human, kind of ends, and then there is kind of a dissonant swell
Hmm.
that drops into the final refrain. So it's, yeah, there's still there I think there's still something else kind of going on, but yeah,
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
uh
Well,
in general.
the cycle repeats itself, I think, at the
Yeah,
end. But
I think that's pretty much what's going on. Yeah.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
you're talking about like different players bringing different, different pieces of music in to like incorporate into these tracks. Like, has there ever been a time when, someone brings in an off the wall idea that you guys haven't used? Because I feel like you guys go in so many different directions. I mean, obviously there's going to be pieces that aren't used, but has there been something that you've really wanted to do that you haven't done yet in terms of incorporating a different style?
No, I mean, see, that again kind of like goes back to how we're writing, arranging, and just thinking of these songs is, you know, any anytime we're like dipping into a different genre territory or whatever,
Hmm.
for us it's all relative to the song. So it's all about, is it working within this song?
Hmm.
In door number three, like a good example is there's a part that we do that like the tune comes down and it goes into like almost like a tango, you know, and that came from like Paul had written the guitar part initially to be, I think, kind of like a pre-chorus, and had like a big kind of like, more like melodic power metal kind of feel to it,
Hmm.
and then for some reason, as I was learning it, I'm always picking up the acoustic guitar and playing. I heard it as this kind of tango bit, and so then you're kind of like, well, we like that variation, and we really like this variation. Now, what makes more sense within the framework of this tune? And it kind of is usually like that. So anytime something hasn't made a cut for the record over the years, it's less like we don't dig that style than it is like that's cool, but I don't know if it fits the tune, or I don't
Hmm.
know if that's what it needs. And because like stylistically, I mean, anything's on the table
Clearly,
if it
yeah.
fits,
I know your discography. Yes, anything is
yeah,
on
yeah,
the
yeah.
table. Yeah.
So it's, you know there are so many points on this record where you have this thing butted up against this thing, and that's just kind of like, oh, it's the nature also of just passing stuff between people.
Yeah. That's also a bit of the magic of it too, that it works.
Yeah, definitely.
So right after the album's release, you're kicking off a North American tour in Philadelphia. You guys just wrapped up a swing through Europe doing the festival circuit. Prior to that, you were celebrating the anniversaries of Coma Ecliptic and Alaska. What are you guys thinking for the set list for this upcoming run?
Well, what's nice is it's the first time we've done it's crazy to say, it's the first time we've done a non-album tour in America, I think, since 2022, which is kind of nuts.
It's
So
a good amount of time.
it's a good amount of time. I think the one that we just did, where we were doing Alaska and Coma Ecliptic, you know, we were home for a year writing, recording,
Hmm.
and then you got to get back out on tour.
Yeah.
Um, uh, but you're also like, but the album doesn't come out till the fall. Like, we're not going to go out on tour now playing a new song. Like, what are we? So you're
Hmm.
like, well, this album's 10, this one's 20. Would it be a weird night to put them together? And so that was that tour. So it's, I love when we do the mixed bag tours, and you get to like pair, a song from Blue Nowhere next to like a song from Great Misdirect,
Hmm.
versus something off, Parallax 2, and then Automata. And it's like, how does this all weave together? And it's so fun because, like, I mean, it's kind of crazy because we had two different sets in our heads in Europe as well. Um, so we're doing that, and then also trying to fill in the blanks on the tour, learning, new songs and other songs that we were playing in America. And so it like that, when we were like in Europe, there was just so much music swirling around. So now to just be focused in on the 75 minutes that we're playing in a
Yeah.
couple weeks is pretty rad, and it's got a really great fun flow to it. And yeah, I think it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, you guys are. I'm in New York. You're playing at the Warsaw, which is in Greenpoint, Brooklyn.
We
I think I'm
haven't
gonna
been
try
there,
and make it
yeah.
out to that show.
Yeah, we haven't been there before.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty cool venue. It's like a Polish hall. They serve pierogies there too. So
Oh,
if you're hungry,
sick.
yeah.
Yeah,
So you know.
cool.
Um, so let's see. So we were talking about Alaska. That was the first album you recorded with the band. And I know that there were several lineup changes before that album.
Yeah.
And I feel that the previous release was the Silent Circus, and that had progressive elements. But I feel like once you guys hit Alaska, that's where you kind of like took off and didn't turn back. Um,
Yeah, and I mean, you had three new people coming into the band, and like, Blake and I especially had like, um, I mean, we were 20 years old, but like a big part of our makeup at that time, like Mike Portnoy was always one of his guys, and so
mhm.
Dream Theater was this like massive door unlocking band for me and my friends in high school. And I feel like, yeah, by the when I came into the band in early 2005, I would say my favorite groups at that time were like Queen, Oingo Boingo, Dream Theater, Opeth, and King
Mm.
Crimson. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's it. Kind of makes sense. You know what I mean? And Between the Bear to me was my favorite metal band or whatever.
Hmm.
To that point. So it was yeah, it was something that was so natural, but it was interesting because yeah, you joined, and then you had like three factions of guys that were all like the composers in their group before, all coming together without having gone on tour together. So it was like that whole time writing Alaska was just being in Blake's old bedroom at his parents' house, with our amps turned all the way up, being like, "Hey, check out this riff," It's
Uh-huh.
like, you know, and so it's like pretty amazing that we were able to really get the sense of those songs and piece them together. But then, like, obviously, we did so much touring on Alaska
Hmm.
before we shut down to do Colors. Honestly, only over like so if that record came out September 2005, I think Colors came out like September 2007.
Hmm.
So you know, we really probably only toured for like a year and a half on Alaska. It's now like we just did like 4 years or so on Colors too.
Hmm.
But it was a little bit more nonstop back then. So we spent a lot of time together. You listened to a lot of music in the van together, and that was cool, pivotal shit. Even if it wasn't, um, even if you weren't necessarily always like, oh, check out this Gentle Giant record or this Zappa record, or the guys being like, oh, Dan, here's like Emperor, or
Yeah.
whatever. You know what I mean? It was still around, and you're taking in these sounds. And then we shut down and wrote Colors, and so that album was always special for what it was, because it was like we'd spent all this time together that year and a half prior, and then shut down, and then just blasted off with all this energy and shared energy, and like really like opening our brains up, and it never really closed off. I mean, obviously that's
No.
like, I think that's the thing about Between the Bear to me, is we're not there's no sound or thing that we're like beholden to, as far as except for just going out.
Yeah. I mean, thank you for that explanation. You mentioned Mike Portnoy, you mentioned Dream Theater. I saw in a previous interview you mentioned that Scenes from a Memory was a big gateway album for you
Oh
into
yeah.
like prog. And then when Colors came out, Portnoy was a huge champion of it, and he took you out on tour with Opeth,
Uh-huh.
right? At like What's it like to get that kind of praise from someone you like took inspiration from or you looked up to it at some point, or a band that like, you looked up to it at some point?
It all happened really quick. I remember we went on tour for Colors pretty much like the week the album came out, which was very ballsy of us because we went on tour playing the whole record. We were just kind of
Mm,
like, hey, we shut down for the last year doing this. Obviously, this is our best material, and we're going to go play it. And the second day of that tour, we got the offer for that Dream Theater tour, and it was, I mean, I was 22 years old. It was just like too surreal.
that's
It was
crazy.
and they were all so nice. I mean, everyone was so cool. Obviously, like, Mike did a drum solo on Colors too.
Mm,
And there's been times we were in the studio and like, there was a time we like emailed John Petrucci about, like a lead tone or something like real specific. And he's just an extreme gear nut and no problem giving settings and like check this out, and stuff like that, which is really nice, because we'd had experiences before that touring with bands that were not of the stature of those guys who either, I mean, mostly had like crews that kind of treated you horribly,
mm.
as an opening band, and their crew so inviting, so nice, and the Opeth guys are always so sweet. So that, and to be such a young band,
Yeah.
just like taking off. And it was funny at the time because, at that time we were still playing, sweaty 500 cap rooms, and so there was a different kind of like reaction to what made a good show, what level of intensity. And so we went on that tour, and a lot of them were like seated theaters. And sometimes we weren't sure how it was going over. And then years later, you're meeting people and someone's like, oh, I discovered you guys on the Progressive Nation tour,
Hmm.
back in 2008. And you're like, oh shit. And it's as much as something like Scenes of a Memory was a gateway for me, and then going backwards and finding everything that influenced them.
Hmm.
It's cool to be on those tours where there's something about your band that strikes someone and they're like, wait, what was that?
Hmm.
Like, I gotta look deeper into what's going on with those psychos. And that rocks. That's so cool.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, really, because
Yeah.
that's what everyone's journey discovering music really is. Like you're like I'm sitting here listening to you say this, and it's like exactly what I went through as a listener. Like you're playing, you're great at playing, and you have a great band. Like this is me like going through like, oh, Dream Theater was influenced by them. I gotta listen to them. Opeth was influenced by Camel. I gotta find out who Camel is. Like
Oh,
things like that.
yep. I had the
Like
same
that's
journey.
yeah. I would have never heard of Camel if I never listened to Opeth. Like those kinds of
Yeah.
things.
I
Um,
had the funny thing of having a dad, who grew up in the 70s listening to prog rock. So there were,
uh,
and without a lot of it pushed on me, but then like as I was getting into these bands that were closer to like things I was immediately interested in, and then hearing these bands from the 70s that they were into, I was like, oh man, it's all pushing together.
yeah, like listen, sitting through like an Emerson, Lake and Palmer record, like things like
Yes,
that. Yeah, with your dad in the car. I've been there.
absolutely.
I've been there. We're not so different. We're not so different, you and
Yeah.
I. So kind of just to wrap up, this is your 20th anniversary of being in the band. Like this is the 20th year. You've toured the world with the band. You've released albums to critical acclaim, nominated for a Grammy, toured with people in bands you looked up to once. How would you describe this experience of the past 20 years, this ride that you've been on?
I mean, it's pretty surreal, but it's also at the same time like it's all I've been doing since I was 12. When I was in
Hmm.
12, I was in my first band playing, Nirvana and Hendrix and stuff.
Hmm.
And then I was in my first hardcore band like a couple years later, just trying to hash out your own original stuff. So I just, being in the room, shedding for hours and hours and hours, it's so nice to have had the freedom as an artist, and even just like within the band to have grown like we've been able to. Like I think there was a time where, if the band started in one scene or one sound, people might have fallen off at a certain point, but then like that point introduced new people. And so for us to have the opportunity over all this time to just keep growing, and I'm constantly doing things outside of the band that are growing my musical
Mhm.
vocabulary. And as a musician and an arranger, and I'm so grateful for all that. It's all connected, which is so cool.
Yeah. And I mean, I think people are going to love the new record. It's out September 12th through Inside Out Music. First two singles are available now on all major streaming platforms. You can pre-order it at betweentheburiedandme.com. You can also catch the band live on their North American tour with Hail the Sun. Kicks off on September 14th. There are reasonably priced VIP packages for all those shows at btbandvip.com. The best part about the VIP package was there's a line in there that you'll sign anything that the fans can sneak by security.
Oh,
So I
I
saw
didn't
it
see
on the
that. That's
website
good.
today.
Yeah. Yeah. And hopefully we meet some dogs. Bring out your dogs. That always makes us happy on tour.
All right, you heard that, guys. Bring your dogs to the show. All right, Dan, thank you so much for doing this with me. I'm very excited for people to hear the record. Congrats on another milestone in a great career.
Awesome. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.